keeping you ahead of technology. Enjoy the show.
Good morning, folks. Thanks to everyone for joining this AV-centric episode of Broadcast to Post. I'm your host, Jeff Sangpiel, Chief Technologist here at KeyCode Media. Today, we will be discussing the AV solutions for education and the challenges faced by education teams transitioning to new audiovisual systems in the classroom, lecture halls, or campus-wide. The demand for hybrid school and home workspaces in education is pushing AV manufacturers to develop new products and solutions to help teachers, students, and administrators collaborate. I'll be joined shortly by some of the top AV engineering minds to address the state of AV systems in 2021, sharing real stories and real examples of how schools today are all addressing the challenges faced by their staff. The folks on our panel spend every day solving these challenges. We'll address hot AV technology topics like designing smart classrooms, building a better audio and visual experience for remote attendees via Zoom or Teams, interactive smartboards, and making the entire campus easier to manage, constructing classrooms that work best for students and facilities. Before we get too far this fine Thursday morning, why are we, KeyCode Media, spending time talking AV knowledge with you today? Well, KeyCode Media has been the preferred U.S. reseller and integrator for the AV, broadcast, and post-production industry for 20 years. Our engineering team is experienced in helping companies design, install, upgrade, and maintain the technology necessary to operate a well-oiled machine. AV solutions that just work, either on-prem or on campus, but also in the cloud and hybrid methods as well. Before we get started, we want to give a shout out to our AV partner sponsors, Crestron and Legrand. KeyCode Media is the go-to resource for their solutions, and we have certified engineers that can design, install, and support these solutions. All right, we're going to take a quick break with a word from our sponsors.
It's simple at Crestron. Customers drive innovation.
Many people thrive at Crestron because they put themselves out there every day. They put out a crazy idea. They put out a challenge to their team meet.
There's innovation from within Crestron and collaboration with our partners.
Configured systems offering that next level of integration.
You're going to see us do things that basically make these systems simpler, reducing the number of components, relying on more wireless technologies.
We're going to push the envelope and really make true companion personal communications devices that can work either in a home office or when you get back to your desk.
Right out of the gate, a touchless experience. The AV and the IT organizations are merging, and so there will be more of the IT paradigm, more of the remote service, the remote monitoring, the remote supportability. We want to bring wireless experience wherever we can.
Welcome back. Now, let's introduce the panel for our exciting topic, AV for Education, Classrooms, Lecture Halls, and AV Control. In alphabetical order, Akmal Bastorius is the VP of AV and Project Integration for KeyCode Media. His certification includes PE, C7, and C10 contractor licenses. So with over 20 years of experience in electrical engineering, Akmal has worked in many low-voltage systems and projects, which include design and build. Among these projects are studios for audiovisual systems, cabling infrastructure, and many other low-voltage systems such as security and PA. Akmal was essential to new builds and renovations for KCRW, the City of Costa Mesa, the City of Santa Monica College, UC Davis, and Telepictures. Brian Retzlaff from Legrand has been in the AV industry for over 20 years. Brian's current role as solution engineer provides him the ability to consult and design AV solutions for a wide range of practical applications, including education spaces. Brian has been an instructor at several major trade show training sessions and believes that education is a key to the growth of the AV industry. Matt Olson, Director of Technical Services at Crestron. Matt will be providing us a look at the essential technology pieces for any modern classroom, including hardware, wireless, mobile, and administrative pieces. With over 25 years of experience in the AV industry, the last 13 of which have been at Crestron, Matt can speak from experience on how classrooms have evolved over the years and give perspective on where the technology is today. Jacob Barnhart is the audiovisual engineer at UC Davis. He has a front row seat to how the Davis team goes about selecting and installing new AV systems across their entire campus. He's going to speak with us today about their recent renovations at UC Davis, as well as how the campus is managing class in these hybrid times. Okay, everybody, we're live with our panel, and let's get this closer because I'm blind as a bat. Let's jump right into it. So we need to define the basics here. What do classrooms and lecture halls look like in 2021 and going into 2022? What are the differences between in-person, hybrid, and high-flex classrooms? Brian, how about you kick things off for us on that?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. For years we've been talking about hybrid, where you could either attend in person or maybe you could attend remotely. And over the last couple of years, this idea of high flex has really come to the forefront, where it's the student who chooses from day to day where the student attends class, whether it's in person live or whether it's remote live, or maybe even it's remote but it's asynchronous, so it's not live. Class happens at 10 a.m. but they watch the class at 10 p.m. So there's a lot of differences there, and we're seeing a lot of that being played out through the way that colleges are running their classes.
Excellent. Any other thoughts on those basic parts from the panel?
I would just add that, in 2021, obviously the needs have changed drastically, and instructors haven't changed really, and students haven't changed really. So accomplishing all three of those goals, the in-person real time, the remote real time, and the remote recorded or asynchronous, has to be easy for all participants and accomplished in an equitable way.
Makes sense. Okay, let's get into the design decisions you get for hybrid. Jacob, your boots on the ground at UC Davis. What are the types of AV design decisions for classrooms, lecture halls, and the campus? Is your department having to adjust for a more hybrid model these days? What challenges are you facing, and how are you addressing them?
Well, the faculty is still trying to figure out what curriculum they want to do in what types of rooms, but we've developed a handful of solutions ranging from a bring your own device solution over Zoom to ceiling mic arrays to capture audience participants. We have a couple of different options we've employed, and we're still kind of studying to see which one works best for which faculty.
And bring your own device is always its unique challenge when someone shows up with a device that's older than the students, possibly. Brian and Matt, have you seen a pivot in the types of products or solutions that education clients are requesting from you? On the manufacturer side, what are you folks developing to help with this kind of transition?
Yeah, 100%. Unfortunately, Crestron was actually really well positioned for this pivot. We've been offering software codec-based rooms for well over a decade now, starting with the Link Room systems, which became Skype for Business, which became Teams as we know it today. So we've been doing this for a while. In several years before the pandemic, we had the industry's first all-in-one Zoom room experience. So, of course, the pandemic accelerated everything, right? These motions that were in motion, we were going to get here anyway. It was just a matter of time. But we probably trimmed 5 to 8 years off of that schedule with the pandemic. In response to that, we've made a massive investment in accelerating our own development of products and technologies, and it continues to evolve. Right? As more people continue to participate in these experiences day to day, and as classes are ramping back up, we're all learning what's going to improve these experiences and make it more equitable. From making sure that the remote participants can hear all attendees in the classroom, whether it's a question from the audience or the teacher themselves, and that the folks in the classroom can hear and see the remote participants just as equitably. So the platforms are making improvements, whether it's Smart Gallery from Zoom or Front Row from Teams, or the intelligent cameras that are offered by equipment manufacturers like Crestron. On the school side of things, we're really focused on making these technologies easier to deploy and manage, and easier for the users to operate. For instance, integrating all the room controls in a single user interface, for example.
And on the Legrand side, we've made all kinds of new product developments over the last year and a half, specifically related to this hybrid approach. Things like new ways to deploy. And for those of you who don't know, Legrand has all kinds of solutions, from mounting TVs, and the camera I'm talking into is a Legrand product. The processing I'm using is Legrand products too. But like one of the big changes we made was like changes to how you can deploy a screen. As we needed to social distance, we needed bigger screens in some instances. And with those bigger screens, you can't always install those in a classroom easily. So we changed the way that you can do big screens with like battery operated screens. How about that? That's really easy to deploy, very easy to install. You don't have to pull out an electrician. We also concentrated very, very much on like mounting and hiding those pieces, like from Crestron. One of their platforms is Crestron Flex, and so Chief developed a way for you to mount the entire Flex, what I like to call the guts of the Flex, behind the monitor, but still be able to take that big flat screen display, swivel it out so you can still access all of that stuff back behind there if you need to do any maintenance back behind there. So these are all things that were heavily influenced by the idea that we were now having to do more of this in-person, remote, high flex, hybrid type environments.
Awesome. Akmal, Jacob, any thoughts on that?
We've been still developing stuff. We're taking a lot of the solutions that are coming to market now, and we're going to be deploying a lot of them this summer when we renovate a lot more rooms. So it's very nice to see a lot of these industry developments so that we can continue to serve our students.
Yeah, and I think I like to just mention, because we are usually in the front of the client talking to them and just see what their needs. So usually they're asking for specific thing for their needs. Like if this one is a technical classrooms, they usually like to have this video conferencing to give them, like they can show every small detail to the other side, and maybe we can address the camera type and stuff that they need. But this is now, it was very critical, because it's not just a video conference call, like you like to see people talking, but you like also to transfer all the small details in this lecture to the student on the other side, like he is in this classroom.
Awesome. And that ease of use, because you never know what skill level the people walking into the room are going to have. That's always the challenge of any AV situation. Akmal, you mentioned video conferencing. So essentially, when we talk about hybrid workflows, we're really kind of getting into how we can make a better experience over Google Meets, Zoom, Microsoft Teams for students that are at home. What are the solutions we're putting in the classroom to enhance this experience with folks at home? Brian, let's start with you.
Sure. So like one really interesting piece about transitioning from, so by the way, we've been doing video distance learning since like the early 90s, synchronous distance learning. It doesn't seem like it's maybe been around that long, but it really has. But it used to be like this piece of hardware that would do all that video conferencing stuff, right? And now, as you mentioned in the question, it's moving over to Google Meet or Zoom or Teams or WebEx or some other computer-based platform, right? And one of the most difficult parts about that is we need to get all of this stuff in the room to fit over a USB connection and plug that USB cable into the computer for the computer to be able to take all that video and audio and output something over a video conference, right? And so one big change that we've made at Legrand is taking all of the different parts and pieces and sticking them on the network. So it's just one cable to connect to them with PoE power, the video connection, and all of that stuff. And again, as I mentioned before, the camera I'm speaking into has just that one cable plugged into it. It's a simple Cat6 cable that's doing power, sending the video into the system. And then the other end of that is a little box that's really close to my computer that converts the video and the audio, which is also coming in over the network, back over to USB. So that's one of the big changes that we've made. And the idea for how that helps the students at home is we're getting the ability to deploy these high quality video and audio solutions so easy with just a simple category cable. And it makes the end user experience at home much more reliable and much better high quality than it was before.
And quality is always good. You need to make sure everyone can hear and see what's going on. Matt, thoughts on this?
Yeah, Brian made a really good point and hit on a really critical way that a lot of campuses are looking to get going with distance learning, and that's to bring your own meeting approach, right? You have it loaded on your laptop, you come in, you plug in a USB, and away you go. So the idea is to have a range of solutions that can accommodate all kinds of spaces, whether the campus is, you know what, we are a Teams standardized campus or a Zoom standardized campus, and you use a flex type system and come in and do your one touch type of join, and you don't have to connect anything, up into including those native experiences, plus the ability to come in and plug in a laptop to join a WebEx or a Google Meet or a Teams call from a Zoom room or a Zoom call from a Teams room, or vice versa. So having the breadth in the catalog to appropriately specify the solution for the space and the budget and the use cases and the experience of the staff is critical. So it's important to partner with a vendor that has those range of solutions for your particular needs.
And a lot of folks like the idea of bring your own device, bring your own meeting. I don't have to touch anything in this room. Not to say that rooms generally aren't clean, just people have a perception of it's a common room. I don't want to touch it. Akmal, any other thoughts on the video conferencing side?
Yeah, I just like to add one more thing over here, which is I think is a critical for everyone or even in the education space is the ease of you can start and join this remote even through any of the platforms that known like the Zoom, Teams, whatever we have right now is like most of the client asking you, oh, I need to have it very easy, just one click that we can have everyone have this setup ready to go. And I think this is something that many manufacturers like Crestron, Extron, Logitech, all of them right now, they just depend on getting this one as a kit together that you just go inside, just one click, and you have everything, including bring your own device. You just need to connect your HDMI and USB, and then you're already there. Even you can use the amplifications that you have for the audio in this room. So this is, I think, that I don't think that this application is going to be used too much unless we have this pandemic that everyone needs to have it very easy, because it's a need for every facility and every education to be very easy and fast.
Awesome. Okay, let's get into audio. I think the phrase of the year for 2021 is, quote, you're on mute, end quote. So with hybrid workflows, we're going to have to rethink audio and how those pathways are from the microphone to the speaker. They're no longer just going to be the speakers inside the lecture hall. Microphone also has to be heard virtually. A lot of people aren't used to dealing with microphones nearby or on their person. How are we seeing changes in the approach to audio design for lecture spaces? Jacob, let's start with you. You're in the midst of it.
So we've been doing lecture capture for many years on campus. So the actual voice pickup for the instructor is pretty similar. Almost all of our instructors carry a belt pack with a lav, or they're walking around with a handheld. But picking up the audience members so that the people following along at home or afterward can hear audience questions and participation has been where we've developed a little bit. So we started off with using like a catchbox mic, just chucking around a belt pack. That was a cost-effective solution, and we're more now exploring ceiling mic arrays to be able to seamlessly kind of integrate these rooms without having to hand a physical mic around. It's just a much better quality service that we can get.
Feels better.
Home. Yeah.
Awesome. Brian, thoughts on audio?
You know, it's interesting that you should mention that, Jacob, because yeah, I work with a lot of colleges and universities throughout the United States with the job that I have. And one of this kind of supported with data, is one of the most popular products we have right now is a ceiling microphone.
Yeah.
And that is simply because colleges and universities are buying hundreds of them at a time, because they want to put a ceiling microphone in to hear all of the students. Whereas before it was really, like you said, just a lapel or maybe a handheld microphone that the teacher could use. And now we all of a sudden need to get that engagement from the students. And somebody said it earlier in this panel, but that equity, the idea that because you're at home, you should still be able to hear things that are happening in the classroom. And so ceiling microphones are absolutely becoming critical. Now, I do think, though, that it causes a little bit of a problem, because conferencing, we all talk about echo cancellation and those kinds of things, but inherently, if you are broadcasting your voice into the same room as you're doing live video conferencing, that's a conflict because of the way echo cancelers actually work. And so there is a little bit of finesse that you have to create to be able to do simultaneous PA into the classroom and have that be a part of a video conference. And that's something that us manufacturers are addressing, but it is something that you have to be very careful of when you're considering your audio solution.
Yeah, there's a lot of tuning and commissioning that goes into getting these systems implemented correctly. But when you do get it tuned correctly, it does work really well. I will also say the amount of batteries that we go through as a campus through belt packs and handhelds to get away from that with ceiling mic arrays alone is a much greener and cost-effective solution.
Absolutely. And once you get it tuned up, you have to pull those knobs off so nobody can make any changes, right?
Well, when they're 20 feet in the ceiling, we don't have to worry about that.
Aqua, you were about to jump in there?
Yeah, so actually, and I like to mention something that I like to focus on is, because before, not only because we just use regular microphone, goes like microphone, the need right now for having this ceiling microphone, because you need to get all of this room from student, whoever talking, whoever asking question anytime. And this one also add another complexity to, now you have two audios. One of them, your amplification inside the room with the same microphone, and also you have the far end, which is coming from the other side. And I think we have a lot of conversation with like Crestron, Extron, some other people about what is going to be the best solution that they can work with this one right now, because there is solutions before you have only the microphone in the unit and the camera in the unit, but this has become, in this pandemic, technology change is not going to work, because right now I cannot use just a microphone that's already in the front of the instructor, because this is now what we need, what we just don't need for this education. So I think if I'm gonna put this one to Matt, that if he can give us some stuff about the Crestron we have right now, just covering use this multiple manufacture of this ceiling microphone and how easy we can integrate it with.
But I also want to highlight a little bit that's kind of important here that Jacob kind of references. You know, it takes a while to tune. And a lot of us manufacturers, I know especially from Legrand AV, we really depend on partners like KeyCode to be able to work with those end users and to be able to go out and in the field and actually help them tune or potentially tune it and then let the customer, you know, have a tuned system, because it is a finesse. It requires a lot of experience and knowledge to tune a room correctly. And it's not something you probably want to take on if you don't have the experience to do it. And let a vendor like KeyCode or somebody like that really step in and help you there.
Awesome. And the other fun thing is once you get it entirely tuned, you get someone who shows up in the room with two masks that seem to be made of wool, and all you hear is, it sounds like Charlie Brown will wah, 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 wah. And you're like, I've done the best I can do. I can't do anymore. Which gets to the idea of, okay, if we can't hear them, at least we could see them. What types of cameras are we seeing installed into these classroom environments? Is there a reason for facilities to get extremely high-end cameras? Or getting into automated camera systems? Can we maybe start by defining the types of cameras that are used in education? There's presentation cameras, collaboration cameras. Matt, let's kick this off with you.
Well, sure. We've obviously spent a lot of time focusing on the classrooms, and the classrooms have specific needs and larger spaces. They need more glass to be able to zoom in on participants. There are a number of other types of spaces around campuses as well, smaller collaboration spaces and meeting rooms, maybe for the administrative side of things as well. And Crestron ships intelligent cameras with all the room kits that whether it be for Flex or Teams, for those types of collaboration spaces. And by intelligent cameras, I mean you have the ability to recognize number of participants, frame in on the participants automatically, count the number of participants, and that might be important for enforcing social distancing or simply metrics to understand how these rooms are being used. For the larger space, of course, we advise our customers to seek out the camera solutions appropriate for those spaces from the partners in industry, and I'm sure Brian might have something to offer about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of where we shine from an audio standpoint. Is we have those nice cameras with lots of glass that you can set in the back of the room and zoom in. I also really wanted to focus in on something we hear a lot, and that is, hey, I want my camera to do auto tracking. And that's been so important of a conversation to have, especially in education. And what I really think is important is that you define exactly what the need is and have that conversation with your integration partner, like KeyCode. Say, well, yeah, we want camera tracking, but be more specific. Hey, the instructor typically stays in this part of the room, and we just want to make sure that it kind of stays with the instructor when it's there. Or if maybe there's going to be multiple things going on in the room, that we want the camera to be able to adjust to that. So we really think you really ought to distinguish between genuine tracking, which means the camera is going to follow a person as it moves around the classroom, to just generic framing, which is one of the terms that Matt used just a few moments ago. That it's going to frame up the important stuff in the view, and that's what's going to go out to the other side. And so, a lot of times what you really want is framing. You want the important stuff to be in the image, and you want the less important stuff to just not be zoomed or not be seen at all, right? And so differentiate between whether you want tracking or framing. And then another thing to keep in mind with cameras is, for that meeting equity, or the equity of the student at home, when somebody is asking a question in the audience or in the classroom anyway, do you have a second camera angle that can see those students in the classroom? So not only, if I had been in class today, I would have sat next to so and such, and I would have been able to look at their face when they were asking that question, when they were communicating. I want to be able to see that face when they're asking that question remotely too. So it is kind of important to consider, do I need to have two cameras in the classroom? And talk to your integrator to make sure you're getting all of those right elements of cameras. And as you can tell, I'm kind of passionate about cameras because I've been a audio person for a long time, and it's the camera I'm looking into right now, and it's a big part of what I do. And there's cameras back here behind me and all over the place. I think I have 13 different cameras in my home office here. But anyway, it is a big part of what I do.
And it's not just simply a matter of, let's take an iPad and aim it the other way and join it to the meeting. You can't get any detail with that sort of thing. Those cameras aren't made for that. They're made to be close up and take selfies. Jacob, thoughts on cameras?
Yeah, we've played with a couple of multiple cameras in a room, and we're still working with ideas on how to do camera switching. And we actually did a project with KeyCode where we deployed a audience facing camera, and that room actually did have a catch box where the catch box triggered an SDI switch. So when someone in the audience was talking, it would switch to the audience facing camera, and then when they stopped talking, it would go back. That was kind of early pre-pandemic stuff, just to bridge two rooms that were geographically distanced from each other. But yeah, that's definitely something we're looking more at moving into 2022.
Awesome. Akmal, you want to wrap out this category?
Yeah, and what I like to add also right now, besides, I think, 1 second. Sorry, that's sorry, it's another phone was ringing. Okay, so actually, I like to add here, beside we need this technology that we have in the cameras, I think also we need to have the flexibility to add the presets as needed. Because right now, in most of the classrooms that we see right now, that you need to have a very easy to switch between the presets, which is already have, for example, the whiteboard to going from white shot, if you like to have a white shot for the classroom, to have the podium shot, which is when the instructor are over there. So I think it has become a key right now to have a camera that have a lot of presets and also very easy to handle when you like to change it. So it doesn't have to have some technical guy who has to go there and just to change the presets. It needs to be easy for instructor or anyone handle this room that he can change the presets as needed.
Awesome. So let's get into control and configuration. So when we get into the concepts for controlling AV equipment in a particular room or space, a lot of customers are beginning to adopt touch screen panels. And these are often programmed with an easy to use user interface that helps instructors select inputs, control audio, change the content that's going to be displayed. What technology is, being developed these days to make AV control better? Also, what kind of configurations or programming decisions are making this easier to accomplish? Matt, let's start with you. We know you've got the XIO cloud and scalability of AV framework and campus-wide control and that sort of fun stuff.
Yeah, and this is one of those topics where it really depends on what's going on any given campus. Does the campus have a robust network infrastructure? Obviously, we work with educational institutions that are anywhere from the internet literally it goes through the campus, like they're a critical node of the internet itself, to yeah, we don't really know how much we want to rely on this inter-building connection. So it's really important to not use a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to how we're going to deploy control. Does centralized control make sense? That is server-based control. It's a product we offer called virtual control. And it does make a lot of sense in scenarios with a strong network and a desire to reduce the number of moving parts. With most things being controlled on the network, we're seeing a radical reduction in the number of physical I/O, like serial ports, required to control things. So do we need a box in the room with those ports to exist? In this sense, moving to a server-based control, really reduces those number of moving parts and things to maintain. So that can be very attractive. But distributed control, that is a box in a room, makes a lot of sense where the infrastructure may be iffy, or you need a lot of physical I/O, or you just want your staff doesn't really have access to maintaining virtual machines or things like that. So it really is important to scale what we're going to base our control on. Now, once we've gotten past that decision, now we need to figure out, okay, how are we going to configure and deploy these spaces? Do we really need truly bespoke custom programming for all of these spaces, or are we thinking from a design sense to make these things more simplified and more scalable and more deployable and more approachable to a wider variety of staff? A lot of campuses are using student help who cycle in and out from year to year, right? So they don't have a lot of time to train, with manufacturer specific programming languages and things like that. So from that end, we offer a platform called AV Framework, which is a totally web-based configuration utility. You don't need proprietary software on a laptop. You can do it all from an iPad. Really is pretty intuitive. Most people who can order shoes on Zappos or Amazon can figure out how to program their way through a system. And I call it programming, but it really isn't. It really is just configuring, saying, I want to control this projector. I've got these inputs. And this includes everything from our smallest video switchers, or actually switching the video inputs on a display, all the way up to NVX, which is our AV over IP product. All of that can be configured with AV Framework. And that AV Framework can exist either on those physical box products in the room or in virtual control. And it can all be managed the same way. Tying it all together, we have a product called XIO Cloud, which is our remote configuration, deployment, and management suite. This makes it incredibly easy to deploy at scale thousands of devices. They claim them into XIO Cloud. From XIO Cloud, you set all the settings. You don't have to do it on device by device. You say device type, this is how I want it to behave. And then the device comes online, takes a setting from XIO Cloud. Online, offline alerts, any status you want to monitor for via text, email, open a ServiceNow ticket automatically. Remote control of touchscreens for that remote help desk and support is critical. It's just built into the platform. So from anywhere in the world, help staff can dial into that touchscreen, not only see what's going on with it, but actually take control of that touchscreen as well to help the faculty out if that's required. Very, very powerful tool. And then of course, on the back end, we're collecting a bunch of metrics so that future technology decisions can be more informed based on how past technology has been used.
And you touched on remote and offsite management there a little bit. Brian, what are you seeing that can and cannot be managed remotely?
Well, it's kind of interesting. You know, I'm working with this week, as a matter of fact, a very large college in South Florida who they want to have, they have 400 classrooms that they have to manage. And the team who manages the AV in those classrooms is a team of 3 people. There's not even one person for each campus. So, you know, if something goes down, they need to be able to get out and they need to be able to resolve it without actually hopping in a car and driving. Because if you've ever been to South Florida, you know, traffic is not quite as bad as it is in South California, but it's pretty close. And anyway, so they have to be able to remotely manage. And one real critical decision they're decided to make is kind of ties in. They're a Crestron campus. They have Crestron. It's going to be this exact same equipment in every room, right? And what they want to be able to do, though, is they want to be able to have an extra controller or an extra DM switcher that is already pre-configured. The IP address, everything is configured. Well, if you've ever managed over a network, you know everything has to have a different IP address. So they're even going so far as to put every single classroom in its own basic subnet so that they can just swap out one device for another device and everything just kind of comes right back up and works, right? So if they need somebody to swap out a piece of hardware, that person has to have no training other than go in and plug everything into the new one the way that it was plugged into the old one, and it comes back up again, right? Well, that requires remote, an extra level of remote management capability. And part of what I want to get at there is that everything they're deploying, even though it's all the same throughout all of those, it can communicate back to the main master control in one way or another, whether it's the different services that Matt talked about, or if it's maybe even a homebrew. Homebrews don't work very good usually, but they have to get back to that main location. So when you're thinking about product selection, it's really important that you look at products throughout the entire portfolio of what's going into your classroom that can be managed remotely. They have to have a network port. They have to live on the network. They have to be able to talk to the network in a way that the network can manage that communication protocol back and forth. And that's really what I wanted to talk about, is that, you know, offsite remote management is all about making sure the equipment itself has that. You know, you can choose to put in a dumb camera, for instance. But do you really want a dumb camera there if you really want to be able to know that it's working and that it's up and that it's running? For instance, my camera is reporting right now the exact frame rate and the exact resolution that it's outputting right now. I can see that remotely over the network. I have a dashboard right here I'm looking at. And so I know exactly what that looks like. And that's so critical when you're a small little team that has to manage lots of classrooms. And I imagine, Jacob, I know you were going to mention a little something here, but any guidance on that?
Well, one of the other great things about having network cameras is if there's an issue in a room, we can hop on the H.264 stream and see what's happening in the room from my desk. And then when we are working remotely through a touchscreen, we can visually verify what we're doing in the room is actually working. I mean, I can go into DM Tool and I can see that a input was selected to a screen, but I can log into the camera and I can actually see what's going on in the room remotely, which is really cool. And we've got over 40 cameras across the campus. Slowly, all of our lecture halls are getting them. And that's one of the really, really great tools that we've implemented on top of having remote access to all of our Crestron systems.
And I really like that idea of the each room having its own set of IP addresses that's going to match others, so their own unified subnets, because 192.168.0.10 being that the same in every room just makes that swap out so much easier. Let's get
and
into
by the
this.
way, I'm sorry, Jeff, didn't mean to interrupt there, but by the way, the way that that's going to work is something that a traditional college campus would say we would never, ever in a million years do this, but they are doing it. They're going to put a small router in every classroom, and that's going to give them that capability. So I know that's a hard conversation to have with the network team, but it really makes the AV team very, very happy if you can throw a small router, not just a switch, but a router in every classroom.
And the other thing is, we here at KeyCode, we do that day in and day out with live and post-production systems. While having the conversation may be difficult, implementing for us, it's pretty simple. We've got the stuff picked out. We know what works, and we know how to architect this in a way that's going to be happy for everybody. Okay, getting into smart screens. Akmal, I know you've personally seen a large number of requests for taking the old whiteboards and chalkboards and just throwing them away, replacing those with interactive smart screens. Can you give me some examples of why people are switching to these smart screens?
You're muted, Akmal.
You're muted. There has to be one in every call.
There you go.
Sorry.
No worries.
So it's actually for the same reasons that we all talking about, moving everything to be hybrid right now, because maybe you have only 10% of the audience or the student inside the room, so you have 90% outside. And I'm one of these people that I like to whiteboard something. I like to use something like a pen, just as a feeling of a pen, and I just whiteboard something, not everything as like PowerPoint presentation, because I feel that this is a way of like interactivity and collaboration between people. So I like usually to have a pen and just to whiteboard something. Even right now I'm using in the iPad Pro or stuff like that, but I usually like to use this feeling, which we found out that many of teachers or professors still like to use even the conventional whiteboard, but the only way you can transfer this data, you have to use like shots from the camera to this one. But getting now to the interactive screens with all of this technology happening in a few years, that give him the same thing that he needs to make this one interactive and collaborated with a student and everything. Also, most of them right now add the capability to have a built-in a socket PC that you just can have the PC already built in over there, which is a complete PC. And this one also safe to the college to just have a PC in every classroom that has to be connected and to have a space for this one, because right now it can be a part of this your interactive touch screen. So in this case, when you have this whiteboard or interactive touch screen, you have a display that you can have output, you can have it as an input using this interactive touch screen. And also you have this PC, which is a complete PC if you have PowerPoint, if you have any application, plus all you can annotate in all of that. Plus also you can record these ones A to Z. Even if you have another recording for the lecture, you can have the screen, it's share recorded and just send this one for people to use in the future or on demand. So I think that people should think very well when they select the right whiteboard or the right interactive touch screen, because I think there is a lot of factors we should consider here. I mean, first of thing, how is this manufacturer going to service you? Because once you have this one, it's going to be your main thing, that to have this classroom functional, to have this one working. So you need to find out who's going to give you like more of warranty or advanced replacement when you need it. Which application you have over there, which is ready to go for you. For example, the wireless share. Like there is a lot of people like this because there is some of the vendors that we use with like ClearTouch or others, they can enable you to have a wireless cast to 64 at the same moment. Like you can have all of them connect and it shares their laptop, it shares their iPhone, any of these devices, any of these, we can have a list of 60, maximum of 64 people that they can share their screen, which this means even for conventional way of learning, people can share and interact with teacher for something they did in their laptop or their iPad or something like that, which I think this is very powerful software that we need to consider when we looking for it.
And I'm actually hosting our webinar today from one of our offices on the second floor because our set is in an area that we also share with Keycode Education. So our smartboards are downstairs in use right now in exactly the ways that Akmal was talking about. But the one thing I've never seen written on the corner of a smartboard is the words "do not erase," because you don't have to worry about custodial coming in at night and all of a sudden the entire lecture that you wanted to repeat again for tomorrow is gone. It's just on page 4. Someone else can do other notes. It's a really flexible system there. Brian and Matt, any thoughts on how manufacturers are approaching this connectivity for smart screen devices?
Yeah, Crestron takes a kind of slightly different approach to this. I know there's a lot of smartboard users out there and a lot of users who totally love them. And while our Flex kits can easily add collaborative whiteboarding capabilities to the Flex kits simply by using a touch-enabled display at the front of the room instead of a conventional display, we do find that some user groups have general technology apprehension. And I know that schools are no stranger to that with faculty groups. And smart screens are no exception. So Crestron also enables products like Captivo and Hudley Canvas to bring regular old analog whiteboards, which everyone knows how to use, and few people have a problem going up, picking up a pen and using them, into these hybrid environments where both in-room participants can pull that whiteboard up on their personal device screens right there in the classroom. Maybe they have trouble seeing from across the classroom, so it's also enhancing the in-room experience as well as bringing that content to those remote participants as well.
And from the Legrand side, we've recognized that these are a key part of education. And so we've developed on like the Chief side and on the Middle Atlantic side of our business, accessories to literally support those. Say you have an old chalkboard, if you're in an old building that maybe even has asbestos in the walls, and you really can't pull that chalkboard off the wall because you risk damaging or interfering with the asbestos that may be in the wall. So we've come out with ingenious, really, mounting solutions. You don't have to disturb that wall, and you can mount your flat panel directly over top of the existing chalkboard or whiteboard or something like that. In addition, we've come out with all kinds of high capacity, high weight rated mounts for mounting those to the wall, for mounting them to carts. We have carts that can hold them. We have these great little accessories that you just basically put it flush up against the wall, and the weight is carried by the floor, not the wall. And you can store stuff down below there, like if it doesn't have the built-in PC, you can store stuff down below and just run cables behind a hidden panel up into the interactive flat panel. One other thing that, this has been a big deal for me for a lot of years is interactive flat panels. When we're able to collaborate more in person and close and not have to social distance so much, interactive flat panels are going to become really useful, as there is a body of evidence that suggests when students are able to engage with the interactive flat panel, learning in the sciences actually increases. And it's probably more than just the sciences, but the documentation and the studies that they've done have been really about education in science, and in particular with equity, with folks who are typically underrepresented in the sciences. When you can engage them with an interactive whiteboard, their knowledge, their retention level goes up dramatically. So after the pandemic and after we're using it the way that Akmal is mentioning, we'll be able to bring the students up there and get that much more value out of it if we choose to.
I like to add also something back to the control, because it just came to my mind now from big projects that we finish in the hybrid classroom. So just gonna go back to the control, because I think one of the needs that we find out it's very, very important for people, which is only can be happening on the control side, not just if you get something out of the box and just use it, is the feedback, like the feedback from the monitor to the teacher or professor. Because for example, if you have 4 inputs, he like to see like something like changing color or anything on the screen, so he know on which input he's in right now. He's selecting HDMI, he's selecting whatever, something like click share or whatever. So he can see which input he's selecting at this time based on the feedback, because this is gonna be like himself interact easily with this touch screen and know which input he's in right now. The other valuable thing that it's actually is a main request from everyone now is one page that we add to the control called the system health. And this one, the controllers right now give us a feedback. Okay, the switcher is okay, and just you have kind of a green bullet or something. Camera is okay. You can have something like saying camera is not connecting and give you like red bullet. This one make the teacher just to go to this screen if the system is not working. And even when he like to have a help from IT, you're gonna tell him, okay, the system health right now telling me the camera is not connecting. So that's also one of, I think the best thing that people need, or the most important thing is a need in a classroom or education, because everyone inside, you need to know very quick what's happening, what is not working, because there is no time to waste between classroom and everyone, especially people in hybrid, people in remote, people inside. So it's not even easy to change and go from one classroom to the other.
Understandable. The other thing also that these bring is campus-wide unified messaging. So if there's an emergency on campus, they can be sent to all of the smart boards and they just instantly pop over and they begin telling people to, either evacuate or to shelter in place or to, teachers to do whatever. So that's one piece that adds a level of ease of mind for faculty, because they now know, okay, what does this emergency noise from the outside mean? Sometimes they don't always know. All right, we've got one question in we got a couple questions in from Eric. I think it'll be important to knock out, and then we got a final question about how to pay for all of this. So Eric is wondering, with all of the USB distribution required for these video conference solutions, are there long distance USB 3.0 solutions being developed? And me, as a Mac head myself, I'm normally on a Mac, USB-C solutions, as those are out there now too. Anyone want to jump on that one?
So
I know.
Definitely.
Go
both.
ahead, Matt.
Yeah, definitely both. We have a broad range of USB 2.0 transport technologies today, where we can do one-to-one or one-to-many via the network, using the network itself as a hub, which is a very cool thing. And most products these days are USB 2.0 compatible as well. That said, we do know USB 3.0 is definitely a thing, and it's not going away, and we're going to have USB 3 and 4. We actually already do have 4, and we're working on solutions for that too. Obviously, moving 3.0 around the network presents a little bit bigger challenge, because we're talking about a 5 gigabit pipe on networks that are traditionally built for 1 gigabit traffic. So those are things that we have our eyes on the future for, and we will have a point-to-point solution for USB 3.0 in the very near future. And USB-C as a connector type, absolutely. And I think we could all stand to probably learn a little bit more about that connector type and its capabilities and how it's implemented in various ways across manufacturers. But that is becoming the dominant connector type on most sources. So you're going to start seeing, at least from the Crestron side, a lot of new products that embrace that as the input signal connector type.
And on the Legrand side, the Vadio business has been selling long USB 3.0 cables for quite some time now. We have them in non-plenum and plenum versions. We can go up to basically 95 feet or so over a real USB 3.0 cable, full speed, backwards compatible to 2, so on and so forth. We also sell 2 boxes that will extend USB 3.0 at full bandwidth between, basically a host box and a device box over Cat6A cable. That is in our product portfolio from Vadio, and we have a similar product from C2G. And C2G just came out with USB-C full bandwidth extenders over Cat cable. Now, this is a little bit particular here. The transmitter / receiver boxes have a pre-made cable. It's a category cable. It's either plenum or non-plenum, but it's a specific length. And those boxes are available right now from C2G.
And extending USB 3.0 is something I've been doing, and I know KeyCode is able to do for the last 5 years now. Most of the color correction grading systems have panels that are way far away, and they require USB 3.0. So we were extending that about 5-6 years ago. So definitely ways to get it done for you. And then Eric also was wondering that ultimately an AV solution is only as good as the person operating it. Any thoughts on how to best help teaching faculty to adapt to the new technology, particularly when it comes to room controls? Train the trainer.
I think it begins with a simplified user interface. That's one of the huge benefits of AV framework is it's consistent, right? If a campus standardizes on something like AV framework, or perhaps maybe their own standards, but there is a standard that's the same from room to room, from the math and sciences to the English department to wherever they go on campus, a faculty member should be able to walk up to a touch screen and know what to do. Long gone are the days where every possible thing you could possibly do with the system need to be on the touch screen. I think we're learning how to leverage automation a little bit more, use things like occupancy sensors to, hey, there's someone here and they plugged in a laptop. I can kind of know what they want to do based on those two things being true, right? Leverage the background automation that you paid for in these control systems to do smart things and anticipate behaviors so that there's fewer buttons and clicks to get things going. And then in general, after that, make things easy to find, implement some strong user experience theories that exist in the world. And we have built those theories into the AV framework user interface that's already built for you if the school opts to standardize on AV framework. As you add sources, the UI builds itself. As you remove sources, it modifies itself. Same thing with outputs. Instead of one screen, you get two screens to select sources for. It's very simple to use, very easy to navigate, and it's not cluttered. And it's easy to migrate between space to space with that.
Very cool. Let's get to the most difficult question. Access to funding to pay for all of this. So all the equipment sounds great. How are you going to put it in your budget, and where's the budget going to come from? Brian, you got insight into some unique things that a lot of people may not know about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. So one really key thing to understand is there were 3 major educational stimulus over the last 18 months, 20 months, I guess. And those 3 stimulus injected a lot of money into education, both K-12 and higher education, both public and private. And there's only been a fraction of that amount of money that was that was allocated that has been used. So there's still a huge pot of money available from the stimulus. Now, one thing you have to be careful of is the stimulus money really isn't supposed to be used for you to update all of your classrooms with, new technology, but it is supposed to be used to update classrooms with distance learning technology. Now, one thing you can do is if you equip your classrooms with distance learning technology, the ancillary products that make that work include displays and touchscreens and all of these other, cabling and microphones and speakers and all the things that make a room also make it a distance learning room. One other key consideration there is if you equip your room for distance learning, for synchronous distance learning, live video conferencing distance learning, you also as a side effect get lecture capture, you get presentation modes where you're not doing distance learning that particular moment. You get all of those other functions because you've equipped your room correctly for distance learning. So my recommendation is, and I don't know how we can share this best, and maybe somebody from KeyCode can help, but there is a government website out there. It's covid-relief-data.gov. And that website will bring you directly to a map of the United States, click on your state. You can drill down and find your institution. You can find out how much money was assigned. You can find out how much money's already been spent. And you can then go to a provost or a dean or somebody in the school and say, listen, I know we still have $19 million to spend on our COVID relief funds, and we could really use some updates to enhance our distance learning capabilities because we can't predict what's going to happen in the future. So it would be great if you as dean could put in our name as somebody who needs a couple million of that dollars to do the upgrades we need to do. Initially, the other uses that was for is for like heating and air conditioning and PPE and all kinds of other stuff you could use that money for. But what we're finding now is education institutions can use that to update distance learning still within the parameters of what the federal government decided it was supposed to be used for. And there's still a lot of money out there. So go find your money.
Which is always a good thing to do, find the money. One last thing that everyone does need to keep in mind, the news has been full of stories about how pinched supply chain has been over the last several months and how it's not going to be getting too much better anytime soon. Frankly, Christmas shopping for most folks is the key thing for supply chain, but it keeps a lot of things held up. So if you've got projects that are waiting in the wings, it's better to try to move on them sooner and give yourself a larger lead time in order to make sure that things are going to arrive on time for your deadline. We're at KeyCode, we track supply chain issues and we look into our purchasing department. We'll reach out to different warehouses and distribution to find out where things could be. And if things aren't going to be readily available, we'll look to re-engineer a solution with something that can be available, but give yourself some time. So the two core things for any project are money and time. Brian got into the money and time. You guys can figure that out. I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today on our panel. It's been great. If you've got questions about AV for Education Solutions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us here at KeyCode Media, www.keycodemedia.com. The link for the website that Brian had mentioned will be probably put into the chats, so that'll be available. Thanks everybody for attending, and hope you have a great Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.